Ah boy, time to spend God knows how long covering a 20-year-old English adaptation of a 30-year-old animated movie. Here we go. A final solitary battle, the father of Z-Warrior Son Goku, who challenged Frieza, localized as Dragon Ball Z, Bardock, the father of Goku, is a 1990 animated TV special in the Dragon Ball franchise that was dubbed into English in 2000 by anime distribution company Funimation, who were at that time a relatively unknown force in the anime industry. Dragon Ball is what propelled Funimation and the Western anime industry into stardom, but there were undeniably some growing pains along the way. Funimation's original English dub of Dragon Ball Z was notorious for being a sloppy translation full of mischaracterization and outright fabrications. When Funimation dubbed Dragon Ball Z's updated re-release, Dragon Ball Z Kai, they fixed most of these issues and gave English-speaking fans of Dragon Ball a dub that was incredibly well received by fans of the Japanese original. However, most of the Dragon Ball Z movies and specials have largely been re-released with their original dubs intact, save for a few minor differences here and there. For the most part, this isn't really an issue for the English-speaking Dragon Ball community at large, because most of these movies aren't really canon to the main series timeline. But the two TV specials are. This essentially means that the entire English-speaking fandom's first frame of reference when it comes to Bardock is a horribly outdated dub that's over 20 years old at this point. This is a problem because just like Funimation's early 2000s work on Dragon Ball Z, this dub is mistranslated and often just makes things up wholesale. If you're watching this, I'm assuming you have some familiarity with the source material, but for the purposes of this movie, the Saiyans are a warrior race of aliens that conquer planets for the galactic tyrant Frieza. One day, a group of Saiyan warriors attacks a race of aliens that can see the future under Frieza's orders. One of the aliens survives and attacks the leader of the group of warriors, Bardock. He gives Bardock the power to see the future, and Bardock realizes Frieza is going to betray and kill them all. Bardock then does everything in his power to try and stop this from happening, only for him to end up fulfilling the prophecy and rushing headlong into his death and the destruction of the Saiyan homeworld at the hands of Frieza. Make no mistake, the dub gets all these plot details across fine, and that's not what I'm going to complain about here, but where it really screws up is in the details, and it does it so consistently that while the core plot beats of the movie are pretty much identical, the actual characterizations of the people involved are shockingly different. Let's start from the beginning and work our way towards the end here. I'm not going to criticize the English vocal performances in this movie too much, because this is one of Funimation's earlier dubs, and I don't think it's fair to be overly critical towards voice actors who were pretty much amateurs at the time. But it is worth noting that Funimation did do some minor recasting for the remastered release of this movie in 2008, mostly to bring this movie in line with the remastered releases of the series proper, leaving most of the major performances unchanged.
Planet Vegeta. Many years ago, a small child was born. Unheralded and unattended by its father and mother, the baby cried out, making its lonely plea to the universe.
Planet Vegeta. Many years ago, a small child was born. Unheralded and unattended by its father or mother, the baby cried out, making its lonely plea to the universe.
Get him out of there! Something serious is going on!
Get him out of there! Something serious is going on!
Nobody knows that yet. But take my advice and stay on his good side.
Nobody really knows that yet. But take my advice and stay on his good side.
God, they really did have Christopher Sabat voicing everybody back then, didn't they? The movie opens on planet Kanasa. Wait. Hold on. There's something I need to talk about before we actually dig into the plot. I swear we're gonna get going after this. These two guys here are actually given names in the English dub. In the Japanese original, they don't have names. They're just nameless doctors. This one's called Planthor, and this one's called Malaka. I mean, those names don't really seem to mean anything, but it seems to me like a really flimsy attempt from Funimation to try and make them fit the food theming of like the rest of the characters, which is weird for reasons I'll go into in just a bit. You'll see why it's weird. Oh, and also there's some Destiny fate crap where the old guy Planthor talks about how great Goku's going to be when he grows up as this kind of tongue-in-cheek, yeah, he's gonna grow up to be the hero kind of deal. Whereas in the Japanese original, they just both ruminate on what a typical Saiyan baby he is. He's just, he's just a weak Saiyan baby, not worth anything, and they both just kind of shrug their shoulders. I'm not sure if I like the Japanese version better or not. I kind of like the English stuff for reasons, but it's very wink and nod. This guy's gonna be the hero, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's certainly nice to see one of the doctors at least having faith in the baby, but I'm torn. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, right. The movie opens with the planet Kanasa under siege by a group of Saiyans under the orders of Frieza. I'm not going to go into every single dialogue change here because the dub adds a lot of extra dialogue and a lot of it's not terribly important to the plot as a whole. If I feel it's significant, I will comment on it. For example, in the dub, some of the Kanasans are given names like Tulu and Demetrius. It's ultimately pretty unimportant, but it's worth mentioning. Also, for you hardcore sub purists, I am going to praise the dub because there are some things I think it actually does better than the Japanese version. They're few and far in between, but I'm going to throw at bones when I see them. Just don't blow a gasket. The Saiyans are an attack squad sent to the planet Kanasa for unspecified reasons in the Japanese version, but in the English dub, it's made explicit what they're there for. Frieza wants the power the Kanasans have, the very same power that Bardock is given a little later. The power to see the future. Although the dub also claims they have the power to read minds, and it just kinda does stuff with footage to make it look like people are reading minds, and it's just like, I don't understand why you would add that, but that's there.
How bizarre. It's as clear as day. I can go inside of his mind.
Anyways, Bardock and his soldiers are all named after vegetables in the Japanese version, in keeping with the naming theme of all Saiyans. See, in the Japanese version of Dragon Ball, Saiyans are all named after vegetables, or, anagrams of vegetables. In the English version, for whatever reason, Funimation decided to change the names of these characters. So, let's see. The leader of this squad is named Bardock, who is named for the burdock, which is some kind of starchy root similar to like a potato or whatever. The woman here is named Fasha, but in the Japanese version, she's named Selipa, which is an anagram of parsley, which is a vegetable. I suppose you could say Fasha is another way of saying fava bean, but I really doubt that anybody at Funimation knew what a fava bean was 20 years ago. This guy with the ugly bowl cut is named Shugesh, but in the Japanese version, he's called Pumbukin or Ponbukin, and that's based off the pumpkin, which is a member of the squash family, so that's a vegetable, once again. This guy is called Borgos in the English dub, but he's actually called Totepo in the Japanese version, which is a weird butchering of potato. And Bardock's second in command is called Tora in the English dub, but he's called Toma in the Japanese version, short for tomato. A tomato is not a vegetable, but it's usually lumped in with them. I don't understand why they made this change, though. His name was fine as Toma. They just changed it to Tora because I guess they felt like it. It's really weird because it's one letter off. At that point, you might as well not even bother. You might say this is minutia, not entirely all that significant. These characters are going to be killed off in 5 minutes, and that's entirely fair, but I think this is indicative of a more serious problem. This is Funimation not caring about minor details, and what I'm about to talk about next is actually not a minor detail and is incredibly significant and something I can't believe the larger fandom has not talked about. The way they portray the Saiyans' relationship with Frieza. This is a big deal, I promise. I'm also going to go into a few episodes of the regular series because Funimation also did this with them, and it's interesting to compare these to the movie and see how they get things wrong consistently even there. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Okay, so in the Japanese version, the Saiyans work for Frieza, and they essentially adore him. They've basically been given their dream jobs by Frieza. They kill people for money, and they love every second of it. They are constantly singing his praises, talking about what a great guy he is. And it's only the suggestion from his right-hand man Zarbon that maybe one day, since the Saiyans are getting so strong, they might band up and team up against him, or one really strong Saiyan might rise and try to take Frieza's place that makes Frieza think, maybe I should get rid of them before that happens. It's a lot more tragic. The Saiyans are still horrible people, don't get me wrong, but there's a bit of tragedy to it. They trusted this man. They believed in him. They almost worshipped him, and he kills them all, almost without a second thought. Not only that, this bit of subtext adds a lot to Vegeta's and Zarbon's fight in the series proper. When Zarbon is begging for his life at Vegeta's mercy and Vegeta executes him, the bit of subtext about Zarbon being the one that is indirectly responsible for the extinction of the Saiyans is just gone in the English dub. In the English dub, the Saiyans are actively plotting to overthrow Frieza, talking about how much they hate him, how much they can't stand him. Even the Prince of Saiyans is saying out loud in a public space where Frieza's soldiers can hear him that he's going to take over Frieza's place as Emperor of the Galaxy one day, and his subordinate is jumping for joy at the prospect. It doesn't make Frieza look needlessly cruel. It makes him look like he was doing the right thing. He heard these people plotting an uprising against him, and he stopped it before it could happen. It makes it a whole lot less tragic and a lot more boring. It strips out any of the nuance from it and makes Frieza a lot less evil in the process. Of course, in the Japanese version, Vegeta is just talking with his subordinate, and Nappa speaks out of turn, and Vegeta's like, "You didn't just speak out of turn, did you?" And he's like, "Oh, of course not, sir," in this overtly cowardly, subordinate kind of manner. Credit to the English dub where it's due. They try to get the idea across that they're talking about the Saiyans, but the conversation is muddied considerably, and it's no longer clear who really comes up with the idea. It much more looks like Frieza came up with it. Zarbon and Dodoria are talking to him, but it's no longer Zarbon explicitly saying that the Saiyans should be wiped out. It's just Zarbon hinting here and there. I don't really like this at all. I can give Funimation credit for trying, but a lot of the original message is gone. Anyways, the core plot beats of the movie are largely the same up to a certain point. Bardock and company invade Kanasa. They defeat the Kanasans. One of them remains, gives Bardock the power to see the future, and then Bardock passes out. Bardock is put in a medical chamber, and there is one thing that's worth noting here. In the dub, it's only mentioned that Bardock is just crazy, he keeps running off and getting himself half killed, but the Japanese version makes it explicit that he is consistently getting stronger from all these near-fatal injuries, which is a really important plot point, especially in the Frieza saga proper. So while it seems like a minor detail, it's actually fairly significant. You see what I mean? They do this consistently. Oh, and the Vegeta openly plotting to rebel against Frieza thing, that's not in the Japanese original, of course. Okay, so you know how that Kanasan gave Bardock the power to see the future at the start of the movie? Well, it turns out he did that as revenge for what Bardock and his crew did to the Kanasan people. Well, Bardock has Vietnam flashbacks, or I guess Vietnam flash forwards, of what's going to happen to him and the future of his son, Kakarot, who will come to be known as Goku. Well, in the Japanese version, all that's said here is what the Kanasan told Bardock right before he died, that he will see the horrors of his own end. In the English dub, this is replaced with Bardock freaking out over what he's seeing.
My son. He's become a warrior, but he's different from us. What happened? What's wrong with him? Why am I seeing this?
And this is pretty much consistent throughout the dub. Anytime flashbacks or flash forwards are shown, they have the same narration from the Kanasan about how Bardock is doomed, and in the English dub, Bardock is reacting to them. I suppose it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference one way or another, but it is an interesting contrast, and it's neat to be able to hear Bardock's thoughts on it, but it does get kind of old. I suppose the whole Kanasan thing gets kind of old too, though, so I'm not sure which one I like better. The plot proceeds pretty much the same here for a while. In both the dub and the sub, Bardock is out of commission, so his teammates assault Planet Meat under the orders of Frieza. Bardock wakes up from his healing to join them, but before he does, he has a little chat with the doctors. It's pretty inconsequential in the dub, but in the Japanese version, he actually mentions the dreams he was having, which he didn't know were visions yet. Bardock arrives on Planet Meat only to find his entire crew slaughtered at the hands of Frieza's soldiers working for Frieza's left-hand man, Dodoria. Bardock finds Tora clinging barely to life, and Tora tells him all about what happened. Dodoria and a squad of henchmen executed all of them under Frieza's orders, and Frieza is going to destroy the Saiyan race, just as the prophecy foretold, and Bardock freaks out. And now I have to really talk about something the dub does a lot. The dub will often have people talking where they don't talk in the original Japanese version, to the point where there's a lot less silence and a lot more dialogue. Usually, this is a bad thing. It destroys the pacing of the show, it destroys any chance for tension to build, and it makes it hard to think about what you're watching. But I have to say it here, the English dub actually does this really well. You get to hear Bardock's inner monologue, and Bardock is genuinely upset at the loss of his men, legitimately pissed off at what Frieza did to them, and ready to make them pay. In the Japanese version, it's just silent. You're silently grieving with Bardock as he cleans the blood off of his men and holds the blood-stained rag that will become his iconic headband. Honestly, both approaches work really well, if I'm being brutally honest. Like, yes, the English version is less subtle, but it's still powerful hearing Bardock whisper the names of his men, fury boiling away in his voice, and promising revenge. I think both scenes work, honestly, and it's really effectively done, even in the dub. It's less subtle, but all the same emotional beats are there and it works. Bardock is accosted by Dodoria's men, and after some difficulty with his visions, he manages to defeat them and get out relatively unscathed, only for Dodoria to confront Bardock, blast him away with a mouth blast, and leave him for dead. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about packed into here, so let me start with this. The musical score in the dub is fine. I'm not talking about the licensed songs, of course. The licensed songs are all late 90s, early 2000s garbage and they're best left forgotten, but the instrumental score composed for this by Funimation's sound crew is actually pretty good. It's very dystopian sci-fi thriller in the realm of something like Blade Runner. It fits, it works, it even sounds pretty good sometimes, but nothing tops the Japanese original with Bardock's theme, Solid State Scouter, which is so good I used a remix of it for the opening of this video. It is incredibly iconic. But they're both good, one's just better. Another thing worth mentioning, the soldiers Bardock fights in the Japanese version are just ordinary rank and file soldiers. They are just regular soldiers. It makes it kind of weird that Frieza was worried about the Saiyans because all these strong Saiyans were defeated by foot soldiers, grunts. In the English dub, that has changed. They are referred to as elite soldiers. Bardock says as much, they say as much, even other people say as much, and it makes a lot more sense. These aren't the rank and file, these are elite soldiers, and Bardock still dispatches them with relative ease. In the Japanese version, he's fighting ordinary foot soldiers and he's struggling. It doesn't make any sense. It is something I actually prefer the English dub for. And for those of you who watch the Japanese version and you're taking issue with this, let me remind you, Kui is an elite soldier, and he looks like an ordinary grunt. You shouldn't have any issue with these guys being elite soldiers if this guy can be an elite soldier. Oh, and I guess one more minor detail. Characters say each other's names a lot more in the dub. Dodoria mentions Tora by name, whereas in the Japanese version, I don't even think Dodoria knows his name. It's an interesting little turnabout, but it's not really that significant in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, Bardock is bruised and broken and battered, but he solemnly swears to change the future and make Frieza pay for his crimes. and he boards his space pod and goes to the Saiyan planet to try and warn them. Meanwhile, his son, Kakarot, because he's a weak Saiyan baby, is being shipped off to Earth so that it'll be safe for him to conquer. And in the dub, there's a really stupid E-Arth joke, and it's just really forced and tired. Even 20 years ago, that joke was really forced and tired. Meanwhile, Dodoria reports back to Frieza, and this is a scene I really want to talk about because it really demonstrates the differences in philosophy between the dub and the sub. In this entire movie, in the sub version, Frieza is really quiet. He hardly says anything at all. He has this air of mystery to him that's not present in the dub and not even present in the original Japanese version of the series. He comes off as this very detached crime boss, almost mafia-esque even. He hardly says anything, so at the end when he destroys Planet Vegeta and starts laughing like a psychotic lunatic, it's much more striking, it's much more surprising. You're caught completely off guard. It makes it so that if this is your first time watching something Dragon Ball related, you want to know more about him. You're intimidated by him. In the English dub, Frieza is always talking. He's hardly ever not talking, and it removes a lot of his mystery. The twist at the end is no longer surprising. You fully expect this guy to go crazy and blow up a planet. Just look at the scene with Dodoria. Dodoria arrives, tells Frieza that he dispatched all the Saiyans, and then Frieza reprimands him, but the way it's done between the two versions is radically different. Dodoria tells Frieza in both versions, but in the Japanese version, once they spot Bardock's pod, the entire room goes dead silent, and nobody says a thing. Dodoria silently, fearfully trembles as he looks towards Frieza, clearly terrified of him. In the English version, Frieza verbally reprimands him while he's looking at him, and the overall effect is very different. Because Frieza hasn't done anything yet in the Japanese version, but Dodoria is trembling. In the English version, Frieza's reprimanding him, so it's hard to put into words without showing you video, but it's so much more suspenseful and tense in the Japanese version. In the English version, it loses a lot of its personality, and it's just a generic bad guy thug threatening his subordinates. It's just such a downgrade. So Bardock heads back to Planet Vegeta. He is beat to hell and back. He lands on the planet, and some of Frieza's soldiers rush to come help him. And in the dub, they're telling him about his son, and Bardock's like, my son left just like the prophecy said. In the Japanese version, he's more fixated on the prophecy, period. Frieza really is going to destroy his home planet. He rushes over to a bar to tell the Saiyans there that they have to team up and defeat Frieza before he destroys their planet. And they all laugh at him and mock him for even suggesting such a notion. In the English dub, they're like, yeah, Frieza's a total freak, but he'd never do that. And there's this weird line about feet for some inexplicable reason. They all mock Frieza, say he sucks, and they're like, we hate Frieza, he sucks, but he'd never do that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then there's another scene, and I know I already talked about the flashbacks, but this is important. In the Japanese version, Bardock has a flash forward to his son Goku on Namek that turns into Frieza. And in the Japanese version, it's totally silent. He's just seeing the future and freaking out. In the English dub, though, his son speaks directly to him and tells him it's not too late to be different, to be better than Frieza. And I really don't like this. This is the problem I was talking about at the beginning. This is how they ruined Bardock. Bardock doesn't care about doing the right thing. Bardock doesn't care about morality. Bardock is a ruthless killer. He kills people without remorse. He does not care. Even when he realizes Frieza's killed and betrayed his men, he is only interested in stopping him and getting revenge. He doesn't care about doing it because it's the right thing. He's doing it out of vengeance, and he ultimately dies because of it. Now I'm wondering if the reason the dub had him talking about his friends while cleaning up their corpses was to try and humanize him. He doesn't need humanizing. He's a horrible person. He doesn't deserve what happened to him, but he's still a horrible person. That's the point. This is something the English dub would consistently do, actually. In the episode where Frieza transforms into a second form and talks about King Vegeta, in the Japanese version, King Vegeta is plotting to overthrow Frieza so he can take his place as Emperor of the Galaxy. In the dub, he's trying to overthrow Frieza because Frieza is evil and he wants to bring peace to the galaxy. And I'm like, no, he does not. He is not a better person than Frieza at all. Same with Vegeta in the dub. When he's dying from the wounds Frieza gave him in the dub, he talks about how Frieza made him this way. Frieza did not make Vegeta this way. Vegeta has always loved killing and subjugating people. He caves elderly people's skulls in. He kills children without remorse. Vegeta was not led to be this way. All Frieza did was give him the tools he needed to flourish at being evil. He was always evil. The Japanese version just has Vegeta begging for Goku to restore the Saiyan's honor. There's none of that crap. But in the dub, no. Vegeta is the tragic story of how one man can lead another man astray by giving him the wrong idea. Never mind the fact that Frieza blew up their entire fucking planet. No, let's focus on how he impacted one person, not an entire race. That sounds like a really great idea. What kind of stupid story are they trying to tell where Bardock is secretly this gentle, kind-hearted, oh my god. Let's get this over with. Bardock solemnly swears to stop Frieza from destroying planet Vegeta, and he rushes out to confront Frieza's men and Frieza at his spaceship. He fights them all off until Frieza comes out, and then he tells Frieza he's going to change his destiny, change his fate. Except in the dub, no, he doesn't actually do that. In the dub, Bardock says that the Saiyans quit working for Frieza, but the way it's worded, it sounds like he's saying all of Frieza's men around him quit, like he's making that choice for them. And this is in both versions of the dub. In both this movie and the original dub, Funimation makes it sound like these men are either being told to quit and join Bardock's side, or they are on Bardock's side, working alongside him to stop Frieza. I don't know, you be the judge.
Frieza, listen up! We quit! All of us! Got it? We don't work for you! We're free! You can find someone else to do your dirty work! Frieza! Show yourself! We're not scared of you anymore! Don't be afraid of him, men! I'd rather be a free man in my grave than living as his puppet or his slave! Come on! Let's get to it!
This is actually an awesome idea, filled with potential. There's a scene in a filler episode towards the end of the Frieza saga where a member of Kui's race expresses great pleasure that Frieza is finally getting what he deserves, only to be turned on and executed by a bunch of Frieza's men. And I love this idea. I love it a lot in theory, that there are members of Frieza's army who don't like being forced into it, who don't like being a part of it, and they want to lead a rebellion. That's actually a really cool idea. The idea that Bardock gets all of these soldiers to team up to fight Frieza, but it ultimately doesn't work out. That would be so cool. And I just realized these lines of dialogue are so bad that I'm cooking up fan fiction to make them make sense. That is how bad they are. Oh, and Frieza's henchmen cheer for him and praise him in the English dub. In the Japanese version, they're just surprised he came out. Frieza uses his supernova to destroy planet Vegeta and kill Bardock. And Bardock's last words, as we see Goku land on planet Earth, are in the Japanese version that he promises Goku will avenge the Saiyans. And in the English dub, he talks about how he wishes he could have held Goku at least once. Oh, how sweet. I'm not gonna lie, this is not a very good dub by modern standards. But by the standards of 2000, it's alright. Inaccuracies aside, it's not that bad. But it doesn't really matter that much anymore because we're finally getting what I hope will be an accurate English adaptation of this because of the Bardock DLC that's coming out for Dragon Ball Z Kakarot today. This should tell the story faithfully, I hope. And, well, if not, we'll at least have something to compare the dub to. As it stands, the dub is an interesting piece of history as far as Funimation's dubbing process for Dragon Ball is concerned. Thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and for the sake of this video, I'm not talking about anything Dragon Ball Super or Dragon Ball Super Broly related. That's gonna have to be for someone else. Did you hear that? Listen to that again. That is the sound of Ed Marcus taking a sip of water because that laugh was so raspy it made his throat burn. That is certainly something. I can't believe they left that in the movie. That's not the Funimation dub, that's the AB group dub, but that tickles me.